Welcome to Judge Training. Today we're going to cover several topics that you see in front of you, specifically related on how to judge speech events. Watch the other video on our channel related to judging public forum debate. We will cover what speech and debate is, sometimes referred to as forensics, what qualifications you need to have as a judge, how tournaments work, some tools you need to have in place when you start judging. We'll talk about the specific speech events, bias, and feedback. First off, what is speech and debate? A lot of the times you'll hear it referred to as forensics, and it's not forensic science that you see on TV. It's, in this case, a public speaking discipline. It's competitive at a high school and college level, also middle school and even elementary school level. It's very similar to track and field, where you have several different types of sports included in track and field. So within speech and debate, you have two main categories of speech and debate. And within speech and within debate, you have other very different categories with very different events. So what makes a good judge? What qualifications do you need to have? The good news is none. You don't need to have any prior speech and debate experience. You don't even need to have prior public speaking experience. You don't need to be a teacher or a coach. The only thing you really need to do is complete this judge training, which you are already doing. Just have general life experience based on your work experience and personal experience, and obviously be an advocate and supporter for your child and your child's team. So next, let's talk about how the tournaments work. There are two types of tournaments. You have in-person tournaments and online. In-person tournaments are usually done in your local circuit. So in our Tennessee circuit, we're going to stay pretty close to within an hour or two of our location. They're done at local area high schools. A lot of the bigger competitions combine both high school and middle school divisions. They consist of 3 to 4 preliminary rounds with one judge in each round. And the top 6 speakers, based on those preliminary rounds, will advance or break into the elimination round or the final round. In the final round, you will have 3 judges, and the tournament you will usually end with an award ceremony. Most tournaments will last one day. So they start early in the morning and they will end around 6 or 7. And there's some bigger tournaments that will last 2 days over the course of the weekend. Online tournaments work very similarly, except they're done from the comfort of your home, both for a competitor and for a judge. Some are done asynchronously, and some are done live. Live tournaments are basically on the same schedule as an in-person tournament, where you have 3 preliminary rounds and a final round. And the student will basically log on to Zoom, typically used with a system called NSDA Campus, or it's basically Zoom, at their predetermined schedule time to present their speech during their preliminary rounds, and if they break, during their final round. Asynchronous is so easy for both competitors and judges because the student will record their speech one time and upload it to either Google Drive or YouTube. And then it will get watched by 3 different judges as part of rounds 1, 2, and 3, and potentially 3 more judges as part of the final round if that student's speech will break into finals. But honestly, this one's so easy for the students because they only record it once. And as a judge, it's easy for you because you can watch it really anytime. You have a lot more flexibility than having to adhere to the tournament schedule. Each tournament requires a certain number of judges based on the number of competitors or events coming from your school. And the reason for that is because each student gets heard by 6 different judges over the course of a tournament. So it requires a lot of help and a lot of cooperation from our parents and teachers and coaches who also serve as judges. If you're committed to be a judge, your assignment is for the entire duration of the tournament. Do not leave early. Do not leave before the final rounds start. You have to stay there, otherwise you will create a huge delay for the tournament and some problems trying to find last-minute judges. Once you start judging, there's a few things you need to do to prepare. Always bring with you a notepad and a pen. Bring your laptop or tablet, something where you can type. Don't just bring your phone. Obviously bring a stopwatch or a phone so you can use as a timer because all of these events are timed and you will be required to keep time just for your records. And also you need to create an account on Tabroom and Speechies. We'll talk about that in a minute. Once you start judging, you will get a text message, or there will be a printed posted schedule that will tell you where to go, which room, what event you're judging, and who the competitors are in your round. For each round, try to be at least 10 minutes early to each round. Write your feedback and rank as you go. Don't wait till the end. And we'll cover that here in a minute, but it's very important that you try to be as real time as possible and submit your ballots and feedback as soon as possible as your round is finished, and then report to your next round, rinse and repeat. So what tools do you need? We talked about Tabroom and Speechies. These are the two systems that are most commonly used here at the local circuit and at a national level to do online rankings and online ballots. Tabroom.com is used by NSDA, and it's typically used in online competitions and national level competitions. Speechies is a system used by the Tennessee High School Speech and Drama League, and it's typically used in our local competitions. And some of our local competitions also still use paper and Speechies for tournament administration, but not for online balloting. So in Tabroom, go on to tabroom.com, go to create a new profile. Be sure to include your phone number and your cell phone provider in your profile, and make sure to uncheck the box that says send no emails or texts. The reason being is this is going to be the only way that you will get access or you will get notified of your judging assignments. So if you leave that checked, then you won't get that text message, and we will be missing a judge. This is what an online ballot looks like in Tabroom. This is for a debate round. As soon as you get your judge assignment in Tabroom, make sure you hit start to let the tournament administrator know that you are there and available. And once you complete and finish judging the round, you will put in your winner, loser of the round. This is a debate round, and then put in your comments down at the bottom. This is what a speech round looks like. So you'll put in your rankings. Some tournaments also require a speaker point information, and then you'll submit your ballot. In Speechies, very similar, very easy process to create a new account. Just go through, select account type judge only, put in your email information, your name, and things like that, your contact information, and make sure you connect to your school so that the coach can connect you both in Tabroom and in Speechies to your school, so you'll be set up and ready to go for the next competition. Judging speech events. Let's talk about how to judge. There are three main speech event categories. There's interpretation of literature, otherwise called as interp, platform speeches, and limited prep. Whenever you judge speech events, during the preliminary rounds, there are usually 3 preliminary rounds, you'll have 6 or 7 speakers in each round. In most events, all speakers will sit in the classroom and observe everyone else. Speakers typically need to speak in the order listed in the ballot. There's one exception, is if the student is double or triple entered. In that case, they will be denoted with an asterisk on your ballot, and you'll need to let them go first so they could report to their next round. Otherwise, you need to speak to the order listed on the ballot. Do not ask where the students are from. This may create an appearance of an implicit bias if you happen to be a parent from a competitor high school that the students that you are judging are in. This whole process needs to be as fair and as independent as possible. So definitely don't ask where the students are from, and obviously don't tell them where you're from. The extended impromptu and TV broadcasting, otherwise known as limited prep events, they will enter the classroom one at a time, because they may get some of the same prompts as the previous students, and it's not fair for them to have to listen to what the other student has prepared. So therefore, they don't get to enter until it's their turn to speak. Now, once they do speak, they can stay and watch the rest of the speakers. Depending on the competition, you may have either paper ballots or electronic ballots. And if you are judging online, make sure your camera is on, make sure you're paying attention and you're devoted to the judging process, that you're judging from a quiet and stationary place, and obviously maintain positivity throughout the round. Whenever I judge speech events, I use this grid to help me judge and rank and write comments real time as I go through. I highly recommend that you don't wait till the end of the round to rank and to write everything because you will forget. Trust me, you will forget. So as I go through, I'll use this tool. And so once my first speaker speaks, I will rank them first out of 1 speakers. Then the next speaker is going to come in and I will only have one other person to compare them to the previous speaker. So speaker 201 did a slightly better job than speaker 101. So I'm going to give them first place, and that means speaker 101 now is in second place out of 2. Then the third speaker is going to come, and the third speaker did a great job, but not as well as speaker 201. So speaker 201 is going to retain their first place ranking out of 3. Speaker 301 will be in second place. Speaker 101 will be in third place. Then the fourth speaker comes in. Fourth speaker comes in and does a great job. Again, not as well as 201. So 201 will retain as the second place. And then 401 is going to speaker 201 is going to retain their first place. Speaker 401 is going to be second place, which means we'll bump down the remaining speakers down by 1 ranking. Speaker 5 comes in and does the best job out of everyone. And so they'll end up getting first place, which means you'll take the remaining 4 speakers, the previous speakers, and just basically add 1 to their ranking. So now you have a ranking of out of 5 speakers. And our final speaker comes in and does the worst out of 6 speakers, so they'll get 6th place. And basically, by the time the 6th speaker is done, I will have ranked the entire round without taking up extra time. So I highly recommend that you use this grid or something similar. And the other thing I do as the speaker is delivering their speech, I will also write the commentary as they go. That way I remember, and that by the time the 6th speaker is done, my ranking is done, my feedback is done, and I'm able to turn in my ballot as quickly as possible and move on to the next round. In some competitions, in addition to the rankings of 1 through 6 or 1 through 7, they also use speaker points. They are utilizing a 100-point scale. However, it's a little bit of a misnomer, and there are some unwritten rules about this scale. Basically, anything below 70 is never used. 70 to 79 is serious criticism. The speech was not memorized, lots of stopping and starting, lots of mistakes. 80 to 85 is significant improvement, and basically most judges live in the 86 to 100 range, with 100 being very rare for like that rare perfect speech where there's no negative or no constructive criticism needed. It's important that if both speaker points and rankings are used, don't repeat, so there are no ties, and that the speaker and ranking points are corresponding to each other. In other words, first place winner in the round should have the highest number of speaker points. This slide will show you times for each event for high school and middle school. And within high school, you'll see some differences between the Tennessee High School Speech and Drama League, THSDL, which is our local circuit, and National Speech and Debate Association, NSDA, which is the national circuit. For the most part, there are no differences, but just be aware that there are some events where there are differences, and if a student is competing in a local circuit and then moving on to go to nationals, they just need to be aware of those differing time limit requirements. And each one of those events has a 30-second grace period, which basically means that once let's say they did a humorous interpretation piece, once they spoke for 10 minutes, they have an additional 30 seconds to finish their speech, and they will not be penalized. However, if they go over 10 minutes and 30 seconds for this speech, then the penalty is that they can no longer place first in the round. They can place second, assuming they were the best in the round, but because of them going over the grace period, they will be penalized by being bumped down 1 ranking. Time signals are a must, basically must be given by a judge for limited prep events. The reason being is limited prep, those children or those students have never delivered those speeches before, and so they really need help to know where they're at and how much time they have remaining. It's basically pretty easy, 5 and down. Using your fingers, 30 seconds is a C, using your loose fist, and then a closed fist is for time's up. And then you have grace period after that, for which there is no time signal. Next, when you write feedback, also consider your bias. Be aware of not only explicit bias, but also implicit bias. Be aware of this, you don't know what the student's status is and their situation is. So you just need to be very, very aware and really just limit your judging to their performance rather than things that they cannot control. Even if you do not personally agree with the viewpoint of the student's piece, you have to judge based on performance. And so if somebody performed well, the best in the round, even if you don't agree with what they said, they still have to be placed first. When you write feedback, make sure you are aware of what you're writing. This feedback goes to the student. A lot of these are middle school students, children, and high school children. They go to their coach, they go to their parents. Be aware that these competitors are growing and they're learning, and so you really want to be as positive, but also as constructive and helpful as you can be. So there's some examples of just inappropriate feedback that is actually coming from some of the real judge feedback forms. So just be aware of that and always think about what you're writing and whether you would write something like that to your own child. For feedback, again, try to be as helpful and as detailed as possible. And I like to think of it as feedback sandwich. Positive feedback, put some actionable and constructive feedback in the middle, and then finish up with more positive feedback. You want to encourage these students. You want to help them grow, help them get better. You don't want to beat them down and discourage them from participating in this because they're getting negative or rude feedback. Also, make it actionable and constructive. If you've got somebody who placed 6 in your round, you need to explain in your feedback why they did not get ranked higher and what they could work on to get better. So again, here's some examples here of feedback and then how you could make it even better by providing more details and more constructive and actionable steps that the students can take to get better. Next, let's talk about the different events that you might be judging in speech. As a reminder, we have 3 different types of speech event categories. We have inter, platform, and limited prep. So we'll start out with interpretation of literature. All of these events are based on published literary works, and they can be cut and even rearranged to fit the event time limit and to fit the complete story that's being presented to a judge. The only part that's written by the student is the introduction piece. No props or costumes are allowed, and obviously would require very strong acting skills, and all of these events must be memorized. Dramatic interpretation is a 10-minute piece based on a piece of dramatic literature. It focuses on character development, emotional journey, the depth of the main character, and the sources are listed over to the right of the slide that gives you some examples of what it could be interpreted for you when you judge DI. It does include an introduction written by the student. It needs to be a full story, a full arc, so that you as a judge, even though you may not be familiar with the original source material, get a full picture and a complete story or complete character development via that student's delivery. Typically, it can be done by more than one character, but typically DI is a single character focused piece. Humorous interpretation is also based on a published piece of literature. A lot of the times it's using plays or even children's books. And some other examples over to the right. It's a 10-minute speech. It does include an introduction written by the student, and it is humorous in nature. And the humor can be achieved not only by the actual jokes within the script itself, but also by physical humor, by character interpretation, performance, vocal variety, mastery, blocking, choreography, even physical control, and things like that. So HI is definitely going to be a very entertaining event to judge and a very difficult one to perform. Duo interpretation is a partnered event. It is a 10-minute piece, and it does include an introduction written by and performed by the students. In duo, you need to judge based on the interpretation of the piece of literature, but also on how well the piece is balanced between the two performers. It really needs to be balanced kind of 50-50 between the two competitors. and they need to be balanced in terms of their energy, the level of acting, the number of lines, and just the chemistry between each other. They do have offstage focus. They're not allowed to touch, and they are not looking directly at each other. They're looking slightly over to the right and to the left of each speaker. There's a lot of scene changes, character changes, and vocal variety. So very, very strong acting skills and strong cooperation and coordination between the two speakers. It's a fun event to watch, fun event to judge, and definitely very difficult to perform well. But once it is done well, it's definitely a joy to judge. Poetry is an interpretive event based on a piece of one piece of poetry, one poem, or several, because poetry, some poems tend to be very short, so you can string together several pieces of poem around a central theme. It does include an introduction written by the student, and it uses what's called a manuscript. There's a picture of it here on the slide. It's a black binder that's a little bit smaller than your typical one that you use in school, and the poems pasted in within the pages of the binder. And even though you have it in front of you, that manuscript, you really should still have that piece memorized. The students just have it memorized. And they flip the pages as they move from poem to poem, or from scene to scene, or from character to character, and it almost shows kind of the transitionary period. The manuscript is often used as a prop, which is perfectly acceptable in this category. And so you may be able to see it being turned or closed or used in a way to describe something else that's going on within the piece. Prose is also an interp piece using a manuscript. It does include an introduction written by the student. It cannot use plays or poetry. So it's almost like a catch-all. It's not a play, it's not a piece of poem. It can be a short story or a book or a children's book or anything like that. It can't be anything that can be used for DI or HI or poetry. It does require a manuscript, and it can be humorous or dramatic. So, just kind of be aware that there's a lot of flexibility here, and it must be memorized. Program of Oral Interpretation, POI, sometimes referred to as POI, is a complex event. It's definitely very difficult to accomplish and put together, but it is fascinating to watch and to judge. It combines prose, poetry, and dramatic interpretation, maybe even a little bit of platform speaking with research and data and statistics being used around a central theme. I've seen the number of sources going up in upwards of 20, 25 types of sources, different books and poems and articles and dictionaries and things like that the students have used to put this program together. It also includes an introduction written by the student. It's very creative. It requires very, very strong acting skills, utilization of the manuscript, both as a manuscript and a prompt. And again, it's very strong and it's very impactful. Storytelling is a 8-minute piece at the state level, 5-minute piece, and NSDA with a 30-second grace period. And it's a memorized piece based on usually a children's story that you would tell to young children, think preschoolers. It does include an introduction written by a student, and it does include some narrator roles, which would make it different from an HI, which typically does not have a narrator. It uses, fairy tales, cartoon books, graphic novels, even children's books, very strong acting skills, and it can use a chair, but do look into your local circuit rules to make sure that, some of them do not allow use of a chair as a prop. The next set of speeches we're going to go through is called platform. Platform speeches are written entirely by the student, except for declamation. Informative speaking includes visual aids, and it must be memorized. So original oratory is self-written, well-researched, and organized presentation of your topic analysis. It is persuasive in nature, and it does need to use several sources to back up your analysis in your topic. Those sources need to be organized and put together at the end of your speech in a bibliography or a works cited page in an MLA format. Some competitions require that you submit a copy of your speech as well as the bibliography prior to competing. The amount of quoted text directly from your sources is limited to 150 words. It's helpful to have a personal connection just to add that oomph to the speech presentation, and how you can relate to the audience, how the student can relate to the audience when they're performing that speech. Very strong argumentative writing and performing skills are required, and obviously strong public skills. Informative speaking is also a 10-minute speech, but it is designed to inform, not to persuade. So that's really the big difference here. The other big difference is the use of visual aids, where students uses posters, usually 20 by 30 posters with a stand, where they go through and have some visual aids for more technical areas that they're covering. So they need to go along with your speech, but not take place of your performance. At the end of the day, it's the student's speech. It's not the visual aids that are being judged. Also requires strong research and a bibliography at the end using the MLA format. And obviously it does require strong public speaking skills as well. After dinner speaking is an 8-minute speech. It is competed at the local Tennessee circuit as well as at the college level and other local circuits. It's well researched and it's self-written speech. Even though it is humorous or maybe even satirical in nature, it has to be a well-structured, connected speech. It cannot be a collection of jokes similar to a stand-up comedy. This is very different, so it does need to follow a central theme and thought and topic development. Obviously, it needs to include some sources and a reference page at the end as well. Finally, declamation. Even though it's a public address type speech or platform speech, declamation is using a previously spoken speech, also published by a historical figure or another public speaker. So a good source of declamation speeches are TED Talks, commencement addresses, historical speeches, social movement speeches. The student takes the original source speech, obviously must be published, so they can't just copy it down from YouTube or somewhere. And then they cut it down to the time limit. They have to write their own intro to introduce the speaker and the thought process, and deliver it. They can even put their own spin on it, but they obviously need to respect the original speaker's thought process and messaging. And the final type of speech event is called limited prep, where we have no advanced preparation other than event prep time. Those speakers that compete in limited prep events can think very quickly on their feet, and they must have a deep knowledge of current events and facts and things like that they can just pull straight from their head on the spot. Because of the nature of the speech, these students have literally never performed these speeches before in their lives. The judges must provide them with time signals to let them know where they are and how much time they have remaining to deliver their speech. Impromptu is a 7-minute speech. So in total, the students have 7 minutes to both prepare the speech and to deliver it. And they're given a choice of prompts. And usually as a judge, you'll get an envelope with a bunch of prompts in them. And you'll let the students pick 3 of them. And then out of those 3, they get to pick 1. Once they pick their prompt, they have 7 minutes. So as they're preparing their speech, they can use a piece of paper and to jot down what they want to talk about. And as they're preparing, I give them verbal commentary as to how much time they have. So once the 1 minute elapsed, I will say 1 minute has elapsed, 2 minutes have elapsed. Once they start speaking, I switch to time hand signals, counting down as to how much time they have left, the remaining of the 7 minutes. The speech must be delivered without notes. So even though they used a note card during prep, they cannot bring it with them when they deliver their speech. The speech must be well structured, using points and logical flow and examples. It needs to be it needs to judge based on public speaking skills, just like you would any other speech. Extemporaneous speech is prepared using a 30-minute prep time. So extempors usually will go to an extemp prep room 30 minutes before the round starts. And they will be given a choice of 3 questions to answer and to write their speech about by the administrator of the extemp prep room. And they're usually given that in order of that they are assigned to speak in their round. So once they get a choice of 3 questions, they will pick one question and they will get 30 minutes to prepare. Usually they can use their internet using their own devices. So typically extempers will bring their own laptop, a Chromebook, and they can quickly research their topic and write their speech and memorize it. So after the 30 minutes of prep time have elapsed, they will go on to the room where you are judging that round, and they will deliver the 7-minute speech. That speech must be delivered without any notes. And as they're delivering it, they need to, number one, answer the question. Usually the prompts are in the form of a question. So they need to answer the question and they need to back up using 2 or 3 or even 4 points. And those points need to be well documented and sourced. And they need to include what in the speech, what those sources are. I usually look for relevant sources, respectable sources, and current. So nothing from 2 years ago for a current event type article. In some competitions separate extemp into U.S. extemp and international extemp. No differences really, other than just the topic. But other than that, it's basically the exact same event. It should be a well-structured speech. Again, you're looking for the same public speaking performance skills as you would any other speech, and you do give time signals. TV and radio broadcasting is also a limited prep event that requires a 30-minute prep time in the prep room where students are given some articles related to world news, local news, weather, sports, commercials, and other types of things that you would typically see on your local news station. And then after the 30 minutes are up, they go into your room and they give you a 5-minute newscast. They are able to look at the articles as they prepare it. A lot of them will sit down just like you would in a local, Channel 4 or Channel 2 newscast. As they go through it, you are judging their performance, their ability to speak without being interrupted, their structure of the newscast. Did they organize it appropriately? Does it make sense? And what their overall messaging is, and how smoothly does it flow? And obviously, you need to give them time signals, and it is a 5-minute speech. So your homework for judging is go into Tabroom and go to Speechies, create an account, connect it to your high school, make sure the coach has approved it so that you're set up and ready to go for your next competitions. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to your coach or other fellow parents that have judged before, and they can answer your questions.